Welcome to the Behind Beliefs and Behaviors podcast, where we take you on a journey of what is behind the specific beliefs and behaviors that impact individuals and organizations. With our guests, we get to the root cause of what stands in the way of everything from health, wealth, and relationships to leadership, community transformation, and societal progress. From topics on leadership, psychological safety, corporate culture and communication, to parenting, trauma, relationships, personal health, and intimacy, this podcast is sure to get you to the source and provide you practical tips to transform your life one root cause at a time. I am your host, Dr. Maisha Claiborne. I'm a physician, a coach, a consultant, and an expert in trauma-informed communication. The founder of the Mind Remapping Company, I help individuals and organizations better understand the brain, behavior, and the root of false beliefs so that you can more effectively listen, communicate, connect, and create fulfilling relationships and results in your personal and professional life. Join us every Monday morning at 8 a.m. and let's get to the root cause and discover what's behind your beliefs and behaviors. All right, welcome back. Welcome back to another episode. I am excited today, as we talk about getting to the root cause of all things that impact our health, as we talk about getting to the root cause of our beliefs and our behaviors. I want to talk about this episode, the 5 strategies to improve our health and remap our mind. And with me today, I have a very special guest. Actually, this sister doc, I was recently on her podcast. So I'm very excited and to bring to our podcast, Dr. Alicia Shelly. And she is the host of Back on Track, Achieving Healthy Weight Loss, and the owner of Healthy Living for Life, LLC. So I am super excited to have this conversation with you. Dr. Shelly, how are you today?
I am doing fabulous. I'm doing fabulous. I thank you so much for the opportunity to come and speak to your audience about the 5 strategies to improve your health. So I'm really excited to be here.
Yes, I'm definitely excited to have this conversation. You speak in my language. So, and so, I'd like my audience to get to know our guests and a little bit about who they are. So tell us, who is Dr. Shelly? How did you get to where you are? What do you do? What do you love? Give us a little insight.
Yes. So my name is Dr. Alicia Shelly. I am a internal medicine, obesity medicine by trade. I actually practice outside of Atlanta in Douglasville, Georgia. And I do a combination of primary care plus obesity medicine. And how did I get here, you may ask? Well, I have always wanted to be a doctor. Ever since I was a kid, I was doctoring on the stuffed animals. I was doctoring on my mom when she was sick. I actually work for the place I actually volunteered as a teen. So it's just kind of funny where this has just kind of always been embedded. And I love primary care. I love what I do. And I love it because it allows me to be able to reach out to my patients and to be able to see them in their best times, their worst times, and kind of see them through life's transitions. And so the one thing that my patients were asking for was help with their weight. And so I had struggled with my weight as all throughout childhood, even as an adult. And so I wanted to, first of all, be able to help myself, but then also be able to help my patients. And so I started getting into the obesity realm. And the one thing I realized, even for myself, is that this has to be a lifestyle. I can't just keep doing all these different diets and things and it'll work and then it won't work. And then the weight comes back. Like, I was like, dude, I had to have a come to Jesus moment with myself. So I was like, oh my God, we need to be able to focus this on a lifestyle and not just, I'm going to do this to lose weight. And so it changed my full perspective, my full mindset on the whole matter. And I wanted to focus on how can I improve my health so that number one, unless, God forbid I get hit by a bus, I'm able to live a little bit longer and be able to make that impact.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I got to this point. Mm-hmm.
I love it. I love it. And it's oftentimes by our own experiences that we come to find that passion and that path for us to be able to help others, right?
Yeah. Yes. It is funny how my journey has led me to this point in life. When you
Mhm.
look back, I don't think you realize that, but definitely what I have gone through is something that a lot of people experience. I'm not the only one. Sometimes you feel like you're the only one, but you're not. There are people who struggled as well. And you see kind of how, first of all, they're doing it and how you can do it as well. Makes it a little bit easier.
I know. I mean, and it's interesting as you share. I was thinking about, it's like sort of inspires me to think about my own journey and how I've come full circle as well. So it's a very common thing, and I think even just, we're talking about health strategies, but I think for people who are thinking about what they love, loving what they do, it's also is very useful to understand that, as you're mapping out, even what you feel called to or fulfilled, that's part of your health strategy as well. And sometimes the thing that you feel like that you're most struggling with is the thing that you could use to inspire others. So I appreciate that aspect of your story, Yeah. So I'm curious about, you said at some point you realized that it had to be a lifestyle. And I'm curious about what was the mindset shift for you that happened that had you turn towards lifestyle rather than, I can relate around weight as well. And having that sentinel moment. So I'm curious about what that was for you. That's okay. This has got to be a lifestyle. It can't be a bunch of, isolated diets and things of that nature.
Yeah. So, well, let me just tell you a little bit of background. For me, I had been struggling with my weight for a while. And so throughout life, teen, early 20s, I had done multiple diets. And when I hit medical school, that was a total new ballgame because it was very stressful, high paced. There really wasn't a lot of time to be healthy. Like you couldn't, just to go and to the gym on a regular basis was difficult. Like I had to study. Yeah. You go to medical school to help people.
People be healthy.
You're not as healthy.
Right.
So it makes a huge difference. And so I found that in medical school, it got worse for me. I started picking up weight. Residency was not even any different. In fact, it was probably a little bit worse. Even the residency, I had tried starting Jimmy Craig. I had done Weight Watchers in medical school. And then now I'm attending. And you're like, yes, I'm finally out. And that didn't work either. And so around the year 2015, I had reached my highest weight. And so at that point at the time we had phentermine. That's what we had. And so I had taken that and was not as successful. And so I decided to undergo bariatric surgery. And so I did bariatric surgery and I was able to lose 80 pounds and I felt great. I started running. I was living my best life. But then the weight started creeping back up again. Once again, going through a stressful period, I started creeping back up. And it was at this point, after I had done everything, right? Like I had done lifestyle changes, I had done bariatric surgery, and still regaining this weight. I knew it had to be a problem. I mean, and then at this time, I had just finished my boards for obesity medicine. And I realized that for me, we talk about obesity being a chronic disease. And with it being a chronic disease, it's a multifactorial. There's many reasons why people gain weight. And it's relapsing, meaning that you see this up and down, as far as with your weight. And you may try different interventions and you lose weight, but then as soon as you stop the intervention, the weight comes back. And that's what I was seeing. That's what I was saying with myself. So I actually had come back. This is the beginning of 2020. I had come back from a vacation right before the pandemic. And I was looking through those pictures and I didn't realize this, but subconsciously, I was ashamed of how I looked. I only took selfies. I literally have this here of me in Israel right here. That's all I had. I was like, I was there for a whole 2 weeks and all I have are selfies. And subconsciously, I was ashamed of how I looked. And when I got on that scale after I got back, the shame was there. Like when we talk about shaming and blaming yourself, I was there. And then after I had a pity party, because I'll be honest with you, I had a pity party. I realized, I'm like, Alicia, you have a chronic disease. And with this chronic disease, it's going to be multifactorial. It's going to be something that you have to make a lifestyle, and so that kind of started my change in my mindset. where
Yeah.
for me, it was so important that I made everything that I did part of my lifestyle and to not do anything too extreme. Now, I'll be honest with you, I did start taking medications to kind of what we had at the time to kind of help with controlling that appetite, to kind of help me get more. And it wasn't until I actually started training because I was still active. I was running marathons. I kind of upped the ante these last couple years and started doing triathlons and I attempted my first, attempted two Ironmans. So thank you. It was, when I look back, I'm like, I don't know, you were crazy. I was like, how did I do that? But the funny thing was I got to my best shape doing that. And I realized for me, like these activities, I have to make it fun. Like it has to be something that is entertaining, something that is a challenge for me, that I can be able to make that so that I can continue to live a more healthier and be a healthier way too. So that's kind of how I made that shift.
That's huge. It's huge. I mean, there's so many things I heard in there, right? It's like you tried all the things didn't work. They work. Some of them worked for a while. And I think that's where it gets a slippery slope, because you have things that are like, well, it's working. And then, there's this, how do you say, we take our foot off the gas a little bit.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. And it's a very common thing that happens. And so like maybe that took place and things started creeping up. But what I heard was like a reframe in the way you thought about what was happening with you. Like, I'm experiencing a chronic disease. I have a chronic disease. Yeah. And so how do you deal with something that's chronic? You create a whole lifestyle around it to manage it. Yes. Right. And so I love that reframe that helped you to really say, okay, this is not a short term. This is a long-term thing that I'm going to be dealing with and managing, and I can manage it. And then the other thing I love, it's interesting because I remember seeing you post on Facebook when you were doing a race. I think it was a marathon. It was a marathon, right?
It could have been, yeah.
Very recently you did I think it was very recently, I think you posted about a race that you did.
Yes, the half marathon, the public
half marathon. Yeah, it was a half marathon. And I'm like, I'm not a runner. So I'm always like, hats off, bowing down to the people who are running and doing multiple triathlons. I'm with the yoga and I'm with the martial arts, that's what I'm with. But the long
listen, yoga is important. Yoga is important. When I stop my yoga, I feel all the stiffness.
Yes. I turned 49 immediately when I stopped yoga. Otherwise, I'm still in my 30s.
Yeah, exactly. I don't wake up and be like, why does this hurt? All I did was sleep.
Right. Why do I suddenly feel my age? Right.
Walking around.
Yes. So I just love that you also said that you had to make it fun. And let me tell you, it is one of those, when I was in clinical practice and I would talk to patients and I would say, what do you like to do that's movement? Because I am the same as I feel like we're sisters, sisters from another mister, right? Because I could not sustain exercise. That's why martial arts. That's why yoga. I used to be a gym person, but I could only sustain going to the gym when I was going to classes with really good music, or I was going like step classes or cycle classes. But it left me without accountability because, like with you, as a resident, as a medical student, as a resident, we didn't have time to go places, right? And so I had to discover something that was fun that I could do at home. And then I had to discover, I used to rollerblade. I discovered some partners that I could do things with. And so I just really appreciate you sharing that bit about, it doesn't have to be boring. It doesn't have to be hard. It can be fun,
Yeah. And I love how you said that you had an accountability partner, or even if they weren't, but friends to make it fun. I find the best time is that when I started running, I ran with a friend. We would meet up and we would walk, run, we would chat. It would be like a de-stress moment. We're getting rid of everything. And then we're just enjoying each other. And then when I started training for races, I worked with a group. So I was meeting up with them and it made me more accountable. I find sometimes myself, it is hard for me to be accountable to myself. Like I kind of need to be like, if I'm going to see the personal trainer, I'm like, I'm there. I'm going to see you. You're going to call
Right.
me, be here on time, and we're going to work out. But if it's me, I'll make excuses. I'll be like, oh, it's too cold. Oh, I got to do this. I got to do that. But when you have people that are there and you're like, hey, we're going to have fun. We're going to go rollerblading, or we're going to go and do yoga together, or take a class, it makes it so much easier. And I find even for my patients, during the pandemic, I had one lady, they would have a Zoom call at 5:00 with her family, like her extended family, like her sisters or her aunts. And they would just get on the call to exercise together, and they would chit chat and they would just connect, but they would exercise, and it helped her be more consistent because she would be able to be there and they would be able to exercise together.
I think that's why Peloton got so big during the pandemic, was because it really cultivated community. And, there were all these different classes, and apparently there's great music. I don't personally own a Peloton, mostly because I've owned multiple bikes and machines in my house. And even with having the community, I'm like an in-person kind of person, right? Even though it's interesting, I am an introvert, so I do enjoy my own company. But when it comes to things that I like exercise, I enjoy the company of others because it helps motivate me and it shares that energy. So I survived the pandemic around exercise and yoga by doing things online. But as soon as it was safe to go back, I was back with a mask on and everything.
That's so true. That's so true. I have a Peloton, and the funny thing is, I would use it for preparing for races, but they do have great music. Like they have whoever you like. They got Beyonce, they have country, and they'll do a whole I'm trying to think of a country singer now, blanking at the moment. But whatever musician you like.
Kelly Clarkson.
Kelly Clarkson. They have a Kelly Clarkson type of, where they do the whole song of Kelly, or R&B and hip hop or whatever you like, pop. So, but you're not trying to sell Peloton, but all I'm trying to do is say is that sometimes having that interaction with people makes it fun. Makes it a lot fun. And then on top of that, you are hitting not only your social connection, you can reduce your stress because you guys are laughing, so it can make it a little bit hard. And then let's say if it's your spouse, right? You guys are connecting. You're kind of sitting there talking a lot more. You're just kind of having that time to yourself without exercising. Do something healthy.
Yeah, it's so important. I mean, that connection piece is really important because that is part of like our total health that we sometimes forget about, is that emotional, psychological, intellectual, social, fun connection. Yeah.
Makes a huge difference.
It makes a huge difference. So, interesting. What was coming up for me as you were talking about fun and exercise was also fun with eating.
Oh, yeah.
I think that people think eating healthy is boring. And it depends. I mean, I think eating healthy can be extremely fun. I'm a cook. I'm a person who likes to cook. I'm from the South. I grew up in the South. My mom cooked. And so I'm like one of these people that like to cook. And I like to cook for myself and I like to cook for others. But growing up in the South, growing up in Alabama, Huntsville, Alabama, we didn't cook healthy back then. It was all like, things from the farm, hogs and cows, and grease and
saturated
fried. Fried foods, all of the things, right? Lots of bread, sugary cereals, all of the things. Yeah. And so when I actually got into, I started my healthy journey, which was soon after residency, I had to start looking at, well, how do I make the things? I mean, at first I went the other extreme and I tried raw food diets and I went vegan. Now there's nothing wrong with veganism or plant-based, but I tried a blood type diet. I mean, I did all the things, right? All the things. And I was just finding that it was so restrictive. It was just so restrictive to go all plant-based or to go all vegan or to go all raw food. It just didn't work for me. So I would think about, and I love vegan actually. I love juicing. I love all those things, but I've had to figure out, how do I make, when I want soul food, how do I make that healthy? Because not everybody, if I want Indian food, if I want, Pakistani food, if I want Chinese food, how do I cook it healthy or find a healthy place to eat it? I'm a big old foodie.
Oh yeah. And that's a big problem that or challenge that a lot of people face is finding making food a little bit fun, especially with you being a cook and you're always, you enjoy cooking. The one thing or the one place that I find where you can get a lot of more healthier recipes with the same thing is Pinterest. I will go to Pinterest
Mhm.
and I'll put in healthy chicken or, how can I make a healthy lunch or something
Yeah.
like that, and you'll get all these different recipes with the pictures so you could tell if you would eat that or not
Yeah.
and just see kind of how they would and the recipe on how you can cook it so that it can be more healthy. So it's a big challenge because sometimes people get a little overwhelmed with how can I make this healthy, that it's like it makes you stop, like I'm thinking too much, I'm just going to eat what I'm going to eat and just call it a day. But
Yeah.
if you can try something different, go to Pinterest, go to Google search, you will see there's so much that's coming up for you that makes it a lot easier. The other thing that I find to be a little bit easier is if you take time out because sometimes it's hard to cook the day of, right?
Yeah.
Because you have what's going on, the kids, the work, the job, the spouse, and then you come home and you're like, now I have to cook for you. You don't have any brain cells. There's no more brain cells. We're ordering pizza. We're making this easy. So if you can make it where it is easier or just grab and go, it's a lot easier to go. And so what some of the patients that I do is that they'll use like meal prep. They'll spend the brain cells when they have more time on the
Yep.
weekend and just kind of just lay out what is, what first of all, what's my schedule like this week?
Mhm.
What else can I eat? Can I just prepare and then just grab and go the day of so we don't have to think about it?
Yeah.
And then you can go to the grocery store and get what you need for that week and then have it prepared. So that's kind of what I would do is I would just spend. Now, for me, I'm not the best cook. Not the best cook. I just don't cook often because it's just me. And so
Mhm.
when it comes to doing the recipe, I'm like OCD. I'm like step one, place onion on counter. Like it literally takes me a long time. So for those who may be like me, I sometimes will go to, they may have this in your area, you have to check it out, but they
Mhm.
have like meal prepping services where they will actually have more healthier options for you that I can just grab, I can warm up. It's cooked and then it's dry. It's like it's sealed. So it's good for, a couple days and for the week,
Mhm.
basically. So I'll eat it throughout the week. And I
Yeah.
supplement that with like the other, like my breakfast and lunch, which I know is easier for me to make. There's certain foods I like for lunch, so it just works out for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Same
And
here.
it makes it a little bit easier. And then I'm not having to think. But there are some weeks I don't do it. And that's when I meal prep for the week and I have it kind of laid out. And it's so much easier because then you just grab and go.
Love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Another, just as back to the recipes for a minute, another, I'm going to call it a thirst trap, recipe thirst trap, is Instagram.
Ah,
When you cultivate your Instagram feed for food, oh my gosh, all the recipes will come. I have tried so many new, healthy, and delicious recipes off of Instagram. It is ridiculous. That's one thing that you could potentially do as well. And I know my auntie used to do YouTube. She would
mm,
like Google recipes on YouTube. Now, I'm not as big of a YouTube user at the moment, but yeah, I'm on Instagram. Just, and what they'll do is you'll scroll and they'll give you the preview of like how they cooked and what it looks like at the end. Really is like a whole thirst trap. And then you're like, oh, how can I make that? And a lot of times they'll put the recipe in the comments or they will put the link so you can actually go to the internet and find the recipe. And the trick that I use, because I'm like you, I get home I work from home, so that's a little bit of it's a little bit deceptive.
yeah.
I pick my son up from school, and we have a certain amount of time before then I have the evening stuff, right? Whether it's the kung fu or Wednesdays we do kilometer kids, which is basically little person track, and
Yeah.
I have to fix dinner in 30 minutes or less. So I Google recipes that are 30 minutes or less. I look specifically for recipes that are 30 minutes or less. Now on the weekends, I, like you, might spend a little bit more time to make something bigger. I
Mhm.
love one-pot meals. I love making things that, number one, half of it I can freeze for later. Some of it I can eat now. So I have a big old bowl of this black bean salad that I made that's lasting me the whole week for lunch,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And then the days that I just want to like steam some broccoli and throw some salmon in the air fryer. I do that. So I think, I love what you said, just making it fun, making it easy. And, I think that if you're able, like I recognize the privilege that I'm able to have things like an air fryer, but even some of my younger friends who they may not have a fully equipped kitchen, man, an air fryer can be your sauteer. It can be your fryer. It can be your soup maker, your soup and stew maker, your pressure cooker, your crock pot. The air fryer, and I'm not trying to sell an air fryer here, but sometimes all you need is one really good thing.
And there's a lot.
Put stuff in and it's good to go.
And I would say an air fryer, I think I bought my first one at $39.99. So you can catch it on sale. It's not something that's too expensive, but it's something that you can have. Now, you mentioned cultivating your Instagram. How do you cultivate? Do you just kind of just keep searching that, or is there something you're doing specifically?
Yeah. So what I do is, initially I was looking at recipes. So I'll look just like you would search Pinterest. You can search on Instagram, vegan recipes, or, vegan Indian, or plant-based, this, right? So I would search those to our healthy this. And so I've been interested in particularly the lion's mane mushroom. I've been seeing that as a meat substitute. And so I just searched it, and then there's some creators, and I start following creators. The more creators you follow, the more recipes that come up. The more you like those recipes, the more recipes you come up. And what I do is you can save the recipes. And when you save them, you can actually create lists. So I actually have a food post list. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Okay. I wasn't aware about that. So thank you. Because that's something we do. Make it easier. Make it fun.
Make it easier. Yeah. And then the last thing I think that, just to your point, that I did was, there are apps that you can download. There's this app. I gotta show you this app, because this is, if I can get my phone up here. I know we're recording the whole podcast, but I'm gonna get my phone up here. So there's this app, and the app is called Recipe Keeper. And what I love most about this app is that you can import recipes from the internet onto the app. And what happens is, then all you have to do is go to the app to pull up the recipe, rather than having to go to the internet or print. I used to buy the big books.
Yes.
Yeah, girl. So
I still have a lower shelf in my pantry of all cookbooks that I never open. They're just there.
Same. Yeah. All right. So now look, we got 5 strategies. How many strategies have we hit?
We hit 2. All right. So the first strategy is, number 1, give yourself some grace, right? Avoid perfectionism. I don't know about you, but I think that was the biggest thing that I had, is that I wanted to be perfect. And you're not perfect. You will have weeks, you will have days where it is just not your friend, and you're doing the best you can. So give yourself grace during those times. Yeah. The second thing is kind of starting small with your healthy habits that you're trying to change. Sometimes we think we have to change everything all at once at the same time. Yeah. But we don't have the bandwidth for that. It's just, we get overwhelmed. So I would say definitely start small, starting with either small changes that you're trying to make, whether it's like, hey, I just want to, introduce some more exercise. The weather's getting better. We sprung forward. This is my favorite time of the year, because there's going to be extra light at the end of the day.
Yes.
Which makes it a lot easier for me to go and exercise outside, because it's just, the weather's better and there's light. It's not dark. So start small with the small things you want to do, whether it's like you mentioned, we want to eat a little bit healthier, just starting with small tasks. And then as you start to build up, look back and be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I've come from where I started to now, because you'll be surprised at the progress you make. The last thing is choose realistic goals. I mean, not the last thing, that's the third thing. Choose realistic goals. A lot of times like I said, we have big lofty goals. Remember when we were 20 and all we had to do was stop pizza and we lost weight. But that is not the case now. Not the case. We sometimes, first of all, we have a lot more obligations. And then secondly, it takes a little bit of time. Our metabolism starts to decrease as we age. So we do find that we have to do a little bit more in order to improve our health. So having realistic goals, and it may, a good example of this is, let's say I talk about me being a runner. It is not realistic if I have not ran or walked to say, hey, I'm going to do a 5K in a week. You really want to kind of take your time and building up and starting at a lower. I mean, people do it, but it's not fun. Let's just put it like that. When they have not trained and they do a 5K, they're like, oh, why do I hurt? I'm rethinking my life decisions. But if I start slow and started to implement and then kind of work your way up, you'll be surprised at what you're able to accomplish.
That's right.
And then the fourth one, this is kind of what we kind of talked about here as far as with eating healthy. All the diets that are out there, the studies looked at them, and a majority of people will lose some weight on these diets. So you will lose all weight. But the problem is, what can you be able to sustain? I talked about earlier about making this a lifestyle. And in order to make it a lifestyle, it has to be something that you, number one, enjoy. Number one, two, you have fun with it, but something you're able to make it sustainable. Maisha, you were talking about how, it was hard for you to do vegan completely, but you noticed that by you adding in like different salmon, different proteins, meat alternatives, it made it fun for you. And that's how we should look at our diet, as ways that we can make it more healthier. How can we substitute one thing from another? And then making sure that we're having less processed food so that we're cooking our meals. Because what studies have shown is that the more processed the foods are, the easier it is for our bodies to want to put on weight. Whereas the less processed, because not everything, it's not like we're getting it farm to table, but, the less processed it is, the easier it is for us to lose weight.
Yeah.
And then the fifth strategy is, we talked about this too, incorporating the physical activity, having fun with it, doing things that you enjoy that make it a lot easier and something that you're able to maintain. So those are the 5 strategies. Number 1, give yourself grace, avoid perfectionism. Number 2, start small. Number 3, choose realistic goals. Number 4, focus on less processed foods that you're eating. And then number 5, incorporate fun activity.
I love it. We skipped all the way to the end, didn't we? We skipped all the way to the end. The first 3 were the most important. All the way to the end. That's just, that's just what we do. But I love everything that you said, and I think part of like giving yourself grace and starting small and, setting those realistic goals, I think it speaks to some flexibility, like being able to be compassionate with yourself and be flexible. You talked about, one of the reasons why I don't like all one thing or all another, like all plant-based or all meat-based, is because sometimes I don't want meat and sometimes I do. And I think when we listen to our bodies and honor our bodies, we can be flexible in our behavior. And so like for me, I don't completely eliminate dessert because I love dessert, but I give myself a reward once a week, right? So developing the structure, like you said, the structures and the strategies and to be able to have it be sustainable is to sometimes get this listeners, sometimes reward ourselves. Sometimes doesn't mean 3 times a day. It doesn't mean sometimes even once a day, but maybe once a week, a couple times a week. I mean, a couple times a month, right? Once a week, a couple times a month, we have a reward day. Now, it doesn't mean when you go and you reward yourself that you destroy all of the good work that you did by eating 20,000 calories, so it's so I love all of those strategies. And look, you and I, we could go on for another 30 minutes having these conversations. I really think that this is such an important conversation to be had. And maybe we could do this again. We can talk a little bit more. You can zone in on a couple of strategies. Like, though, I think really it would be worth it to zone in on those first 3 and have you come back and let's talk about giving ourselves grace. Because I think those are the things that stop us when we're not giving ourselves grace, when we're setting unrealistic goals, when we're starting too big. I think those are the things that actually cause barriers in us being able to make things sustainable. So that, I think that would be worth. I mean, we jump to the deep end, which is kind of what I like to do. But I think sometimes, in remapping the mind and really like retraining the brain, those first 3 were actually the most important. So I just thank you for the conversation. I really thank you for the conversation. It was so fun for me.
Yes, it was a lot of fun. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Now, of course, the audience is going to be like, well, where can I find Dr. Shelly? So, if they want to follow you, listen to your podcast, even come and work with you, how do they find you?
Yes, definitely. You can find me on the Back on Track Achieving Healthy Weight Loss podcast. Wherever you listen to podcasts, we're there. Definitely, you can go to my website at Dr. Shelly MD, DrShellymD.com. And you'll find more information on how to work with me. And then you can always follow me on Instagram and TikTok at Dr. Shelly MD.
Awesome. And we're going to have all of this, you all, in the show notes. We'll have all of this in the show notes so you can follow Dr. Shelly. And, if they wanted to work with you, do you work with people outside of Georgia? Do you work with people only in Georgia? Talk to me about how that works.
Yeah. So right now I see people in my clinic outside of Atlanta in Douglasville. So I can do virtual, but usually it would be
in Georgia. Okay. Good to know. So if you're in Georgia, you self-identify, you want to see Dr. Shelly, reach out to her. Go to drshelly.com, drshellyMD.com.
drshellyMD.com. Yes, ma'am.
drshellyMD.com, and reach out to her. But definitely listen to the Back on Track podcast. Definitely listen to that as well. Thank you again for coming on the show. I look forward to future conversations with you.
Thank you so much.
All right. And for our listeners, we appreciate you. Without the listeners, there is no podcast. So thank you for listening. Please share this episode. Share it with a friend, share it with a family member, share it with a colleague, because this is really good information. And we want to get people healthy. We want to get people on track or back on track to be in their health and well-being. And also remember to leave a review. And especially if you enjoyed and found value with this podcast, mention Dr. Shelly, leave a review. Let people know that are coming behind you how important this work is. And finally, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, because guess what? You need to know when we're having more of these kind of conversations. These are very important, very fun, and very impactful conversations. And so with that, I leave you until the next episode. Until the next time, stay empowered.
Thank you for listening to our podcast. We know that without the listeners, there is no podcast. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Please remember to subscribe so you do not miss when we drop our next episode, and share this podcast with a friend, a family member, and a colleague, at least one person in your life today. This episode was brought to you by the Mind Remapping Company, helping organizations create psychologically and emotionally safe cultures that make their employees and leaders feel seen, heard, respected, welcome, and valued, all while fostering a thriving, engaged, and healthy workforce for the organization. Is your organization in need of a speaker? I speak about topics like psychological and emotional safety, trauma-informed communication, and employee well-being. If this is aligned with your organizational inclusion, belonging, or leadership goals, contact me, Dr. Maisha, by going to www.mindremappingacademy.com. That's mindremappingacademy.com. Finally, we train leaders, but we also train coaches. If you're interested in becoming a trauma-informed coach, visit our website as well and check out our NLP coach trainings and certifications. We'll see you on the next episode. Until then, stay empowered.